Hello everyone, sorry for the delay, this time only 10 minutes late, but we're finally here. Lovely stuff. FP2 upon us, and Fernando Alonso is in fact in the car. P10 right now, as they were able to take some time to assess the situation, decide on whether they wanted to go and continue with the weekend or not, and we get to see them out on track, which is absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much to Fernando Alonso for biting your teeth together and pushing through the pain. Leclerc currently tops the times, as they had a very good session earlier on today. Piastri P5, he went P2 in the session with Lando Norris on P1. Lando not yet set a lap time, but 28.3, not too bad lap time wise. 28.1 for Hamilton in the first sector. So we got a few laps underway already, but we've got a few more to really get to the lap times that we saw earlier on. 16.052 from Lando Norris versus the 17.181 that we've currently got. We've not got any rain, and we've got a slightly hotter circuit now, as the sun has been down over the lunchtime period and put some more temperature into it. The other cars in other series will have probably gone over as well and sorted everything out for us. In addition to that, the two McLarens were very close earlier on, and that's obviously good news for the championship battle, but it was Charles Leclerc who was also 2 tenths behind the two McLarens. The next car was Hadjar, 6 tenths behind, and then everybody followed on basically. So Charles Leclerc is absolutely flying this weekend. They are now 2.5 tenths behind Lando Norris in this session as well, as Norris goes and sets a pretty competitive middle sector. The only driver in the 16.9 right now, but a 16.9 would have put you around about P10 earlier on. So, well, if we look at that actual lap time, it would have put them, yeah, about P11, P10, P11. So we can go a lot quicker. We can go a lot quicker right now. We saw Paul Aaron take place for Hulkenberg in FP1. Now Hulkenberg's back in the car. Paul Aaron had to leave the session as they had to pull the car off the circuit midway through, about the halfway mark, due to the car showing a very weird message on the dash saying that there was a technical fault and it's urgent that they had to turn the car off. So yeah, it's a shame for Paul Aaron, but they got some running at least, which is good, and I'm sure they're going to be happy with that, of course. Now, just going through the news, Max Verstappen confirms he will be staying with Red Bull, of course. No problems about that one. And once again, we see the usual kind of situation where Max finds a little bit of a difficult way in FP1, and quite possibly we're going to see that again here in FP2, but it's on Saturday where they really come alive and everything changes. So we got to look out for that one. Unfortunately, we won't really be able to know if it's going to be usual running for Max Verstappen until tomorrow, when they do generally try or pick up the pace. Charles Leclerc 28-1 in the first sector. Antonelli's gone quicker elsewhere though to get themselves up to P2. Very close to each other there, but Norris still a little bit further ahead. It's Leclerc who then goes and beats them one more time. Lando Norris currently tops the times with the 16.9, and then it's Leclerc, Antonelli, Russell, the two teammates together. Hadjar, Hamilton, Piastri, Yuki Tsunoda the lead Red Bull for now, Lance Stroll as well, the lead Aston Martin. Then we've got Hulkenberg P10, we've got Sainz and Albon, Behrman, Lawson, Verstappen, Alonso, Ocon, Colapinto, Bortoletto, and Gasly. Gasly 2 seconds behind the top time, which is now Oscar Piastri, who's just gone 2/10 ahead of their teammate with a 16.6, and we're definitely picking up the pace now quite nicely as we're 15 minutes in to the session. There is a big old gap between Bortoletto and Colapinto, so some sort of situation with those guys is maybe the case. We've got a lot of medium tyre runners for effectively, that's the top 12, and then we see the hard of Behrman, we see a few more hards further down the order. So maybe that's why we've got that split there for a few drivers, but for a few it doesn't quite make too much sense why they're so far down, at least to us right now. Alex Albon did claim that the Hungarian Grand Prix circuit will be their second biggest or most difficult circuit along with Spain, and they had a really bad time at Barcelona. So Hungary, they're not expecting it to go very well, especially after a brilliant result last weekend in Spa for Alex Albon with a P6, I think it was. They're not really expecting too much from this one, and they're going to take the points that they had in Spa whilst they can. So it's a shame that they have to accept that, but it is the case. Also, a team that's having to accept it this weekend is Mercedes, as George Russell has said that they've really taken a step back relative to the field compared to when they started the season, and that's frustrating, of course, for the Brackley-based team. But they do have those tyre temperature kind of situations that they really have to get on top of. And we started the season with some pretty cold circuits, or pretty hot circuits, but in the night races. And now we're here, 27 air temperature, 38 track temperature Celsius, and they're not quite having the best of times. That being said, they're definitely keeping it quite nice and up to speed here. We've got Lando Norris coming into the final two corners, going purple. 28.0, not expected to be faster than the lap we saw earlier on in FP1, but going to be competitive. And there is the 16.5 just behind his teammate in the end. Still a long way to go. That's more like it as we continue to see these improvements. Now, looking at the times that we've got, I'm quite curious. We usually see the drivers do the FP1 lap times and they kind of beat last year's FP2 lap times. This time they skipped FP2, they skipped FP3, they skipped Q1, and they started setting Q2 lap times in practice 1. They're not quite getting up to speed as quickly as I thought they would. I think we're still going to go quicker than we did earlier on in FP1, but I'm feeling that maybe a few teams have pushed the car a little bit harder, unless we're just even faster in Formula 1 than ever before. That could be a possibility. And I will be pleasantly surprised. This is going to be probably some of the fastest regulations that we'll have since 2021, 2020 for a while, because we're going to get that reset next year. We've got new engines, new powertrains, and then we've got a completely different aero package and smaller cars, I believe smaller tyres as well. So are we expected to go faster than ever before in next year's card? No. And with a regulation change, wouldn't expect it anyway. But maybe in the future years it might be something that comes around that we'll be able to go faster than the cards in 2020. That being said though, if there are rumours that we could go to V8s or V10s on synthetic fuels, then we could see the technological advancements go back further, and then we would see even slower cars, potentially. So, we got to try and make the most of this season, as we are well into it now, halfway mark and over. The summer break is coming up right next after the Hungarian Grand Prix, and we say thank you for the season that we've had. Almost everybody in the pit lane at the moment, nobody out on track, just a few, the two Ferraris, Piastri, Lawson. And a lot of medium tyre runners so far, few hards, but mostly mediums, which is interesting. Alright, we'll be back. Alrighty, we're back and good to go. Let's see how this one pans out. 37 minutes on the clock, just over halfway left. Russell on his way out. Alonso and Tsunoda, the other cars out on track right now. Everybody else in the pit lane. Currently waiting to see what Russell's tyre will be. Looks like the hard tyre. The hard tyre it will be for George Russell. Sainz coming out on the softs. Good to see. Halfway mark of the session. We're looking for that soft tyre run. Alrighty, let's see what Carlos Sainz can do as they go into the first corner. And we'll look forward to seeing them go into the next sector. (27.9). Lovely stuff. Will they be able to get close to the fastest time of the FP1 runs? I'm not sure. Lance Stroll's also out on track, if I didn't say already. Yuki Tsunoda in. Stroll on that soft tyre as well. Their teammate on the medium having to try and get used to the car as quick as possible. Here we go with Carlos Sainz out the final corner. They will go 27.1. Doesn't look bad. And then across the line. And it's going to be to P3 at 21.7. So not terrible as they get nice and close. I say that 3.5 tenths away. Take us back to the mid 2010s and I'd say that's pretty decent. But that looks like a bit of a bigger gap compared to the McLarens right now. But still competitive and tidy. Alright, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri looking to try and play mistake up front. Make sure Carlos Sainz doesn't get too many more ideas. Antonelli Hadjar out on track, soft tyres for them as well. Antonelli actually on the hard tyre, as Russell just did earlier on. But Albon also on the soft. And many cars, to be honest, coming out on the soft. It's a 27.8 for Lance Stroll on the first sector, across the line. For the Canadian to P1, 3 tenths ahead. A brilliant final sector, and a very, very nice middle sector as well. Wow. So, pretty good going there for Lance Stroll. What they're hoping for is some rain, because Lance Stroll seems to do very well in the wet conditions. Actually, looking at last week's results, they did beat their teammate by a little bit. P14. Not quite getting what we'd hoped to see from Lance Stroll in the wet conditions, but they have done very well in the past. Turkey is the one to watch. Pole position in the wet conditions. Phenomenal race. Absolutely awesome. Back in 2020. Also the race that Lewis Hamilton claimed his 7th world title. Lots of cars seeming to find traffic here in FP2, it's being said. So as they're trying to set their fast runs, a few cars are being impeded here and there. 26.7 or 27.8 for Piastri. We've got Antonelli going purple in that first sector. A 21.3 for Oscar Piastri, who goes, funnily enough, 3.06 ahead of the Canadian Antonelli to P3. So purple sectors are split across a few drivers. Colapinto to P8 as we continue to see all these laps follow in. Albon, Hadjar looking to set their laps. We're going to get Russell as well across the line. Lawson's just starting, or in the middle of. Ocon to P5 as well. Lando Norris to P5. Lance Stroll's already out on track once again. This time on the medium tyre, so they're done with their soft. Just having a look at the order, trying to see what's noteworthy, and right now, mentioning that the Red Bulls aren't doing too well, but I want to talk about the Ferraris. Where's their performance that they showed earlier on? There it is. There it is. Charles Leclerc, the P3, clearly ahead. I say clearly ahead. Marginally ahead of Lance Stroll, but clearly behind Piastri and Norris. Norris miles ahead of his teammate, let alone the rest of the field. So that McLaren car is absolutely insane. Alright, so what I'm about to say is incredibly weird. Max Verstappen is quite possibly going to be under investigation for throwing something out of his car. Turn 3. So Max Verstappen has thrown a towel. They've identified it as like some sort of towel that maybe an engineer has used. And they've chucked it out of the cockpit at turn 3 and now are under investigation. So Max Verstappen tries to get rid of something that was in the cockpit distracting him, and now could potentially be penalised for chucking it onto the circuit instead of coming into the pit lane and getting rid of it that way. Very, very strange. Not what I was expecting to be talking about right here. Midway through FP2. Lando Norris tops the times of a 15.6, and we've gone well past the fastest time there with the two McLarens. But with Lance Stroll, they haven't quite beaten Lando Norris's FP1 time. That being said, everybody except from Charles Leclerc was effectively 5 tenths behind anyway, so they have all improved pretty much. And the gap between the field of P1 to P20 is 1.5 seconds, which is brilliant. Very, very good indeed. And Colapinto isn't far away, and their teammate is the next car ahead of them, so Colapinto has found a bit of confidence here. They've still got a little bit more work to do really, but they aren't that far away. The gap, of course, does get fairly small in the middle of the pack. We've got Hamilton going purple in the first sector, not in the middle. Competitive in the final, that puts them to P6, as they are now effectively 2 tenths just under away from their teammate. Some are saying that he's thrown a towel out the car. Some are saying that he's thrown a rag out the car. Difference, of course, a towel is a towel, and a rag is something that you'd use for a car, trying to wipe something up with, like that. That's the difference. Berman, P11, or the Brit, improving from 18th where they were earlier on. That pushes down Albon to P18. The two Williams not having as good of a session as they had in Belgium, of course. So Norris has almost had an off, or has had an off, almost into the wall apparently. Unfortunately, I don't know any more than that, but they've still gone fastest. They're pushing the limit. Is that foreshadowing for the rest of the weekend? We don't know. It could be. I do hope it's not, because we want to see a clean and competitive race. That being said, at the moment, the grid isn't that competitive. The top three, I say that. Top two, pretty fast. Being said, I think Charles Leclerc may have improved. So, they've definitely brought the gap down a little bit. And there's kind of smack bang in the middle between Lance Stroll and Oscar Piastri. But Lance Stroll and Alonso, actually, the Aston Martins that we were saying you wouldn't expect them to be in the position where they are in the championship, are in quite a good position right now. And Fernando Alonso has had some pretty bad luck. So maybe P8 isn't where they should be, and they should be P6, P7. Or maybe P5, probably not P5, P6 or 7. But it's the way the cookie crumbles. It's the way that Formula One works. 18 minutes on the clock. And we'll see how this goes. So Carlos Sainz just had an issue. That is a telemetry issue for Carlos Sainz. And they're asking Carlos to box and come into the pit lane. They've asked for a radio check. There's been no response from Carlos Sainz. So an electrical fault for the Williams team. Also Carlos Sainz just completely impeding Liam Lawson. And I think, well, I was hoping they're into the pit lane, but I think they've stayed out. So they're not allowed to drive the car if they are driving unsafely, of course. But Carlos Sainz doesn't have any radio comms. So they've stayed out. Alright, okay, so they've told Carlos. Alright, there we go. Clarify. Carlos Sainz finally was able to radio over. And they told Carlos to box, and then they realised that they had telemetry, they had comms. And now they've told him to stay out. So Carlos Sainz will continue in the session and have hopefully no more problems. 12 minutes on the clock. They really don't want their drivers to be in the pit lane. They want their drivers to be staying out on track and getting laps in. And with Carlos Sainz missing out probably a couple of laps there, not having any telemetry to give back to his team, they now basically missed out on a few laps, and they're going to have to try and fill in the gaps, really, for some of that running. Everybody out on track except for Fernando Alonso. A busy circuit. Gasly stationary on the exit of the pit lane. As they do, I think, maybe a practice start. I didn't think they were allowed to do that, but I guess they are. So they do the practice start, and they come out just behind Berman and Piastri. Leclerc's touched the gravel for a moment. Nothing more than that. And also clarification on Paul Aaron's situation in FP1. They didn't actually go off into the gravel. I think whether they drove themselves into a runoff and then maybe into the gravel to try and get out off the circuit, as they were told that they had that warning message, as I said earlier before. So they didn't spin out, they just drove away. Fernando Alonso still in the pit. It's Liam Lawson getting frustrated over Carlos Sainz being sat in the way, but Obviously, Carlos Sainz didn't have any radio comms, so you can't really blame him for that one. You can maybe blame the team, but no one really gets any fines in practice unless it's really badly blocking and it's dangerous. And that's Max Verstappen complaining as we come to the closing stages. 8 minutes on the clock. Max Verstappen stating that the car is undrivable. P14 for Verstappen. Usually they're kind of in the bottom of the top 10 or just outside the top 10. And then on the Saturday they bring it all together, and on the Sunday they compete as normal. But right now, P14, 1.1 seconds away from the leaders, 0.3 away from his teammate with Yuki Tsunoda in P9. It's frustrating for Verstappen. Complaining about the balance. Tsunoda, really, kind of where we would expect them usually, because usually they're running a lot lower, but we'd hope they'd be in where they are now to try and make some progress on what they had done before. So Tsunoda's okay. Maybe ideally should be P7, P8, but other than that, they're up there. The Aston Martins really shouldn't be where they are according to this season so far. It's the Mercedes that need to find a bit more pace. They're not too far away, but yeah, the Red Bulls are not where we expect them to be. I think it's just been a brilliant session from Aston Martin, and they're finding this circuit to be quite beneficial. Will their qualifying go their way, as we've seen some crazy strategies with their qualifying in fairly recent times, or this season so far, notably in Imola and a few races after that. But will the high downforce, hard to overtake circuit be good enough for them to score some good points if they are able to qualify well? What is the weather going to be like? That's a question as well. Moderate thunderstorm warning for Budapest, but I believe that'll be on the Wednesday. Maybe on the Sunday, actually. Saturday looking fairly clear. The evening time, 20 to 10% chance of rain. Today, of course, none. But Sunday, looking at about 45 to 20%, more or less, changing throughout. So, it could be interesting. I think what we would probably see, if it is going to rain on the Sunday, is that we'll get a wet circuit to begin with, and then a greasy and low grip circuit later on in the day. Maybe a little bit of damp, but pretty much dry. So I don't think we're going to see any rain necessarily, but it could change, and the weather is always changing. We don't know. Anything can happen in Formula 1, and if anything can happen in Formula 1, then what can happen with the weather? I don't know. It's absolutely crazy. As somebody that doesn't know weather very well, it seems very unpredictable sometimes. Isaac Hadjar frustrated with George Russell ahead, blocking their run time. Their program may be a little bit different, and they're frustrated with that. Getting dirty air from the Mercedes in front. Ultimately, we got 20 cars out on track in the closing stages as we look to get some practice starts a little bit later on in the session. And not everybody's going to find a place on the circuit around the Hungarian Grand Prix circuit. I mean, there's a big old space on the start-finish straight right now. Everybody else is in the corners. And now we get to see everybody kind of come around through. So, to be honest, everybody's fairly evenly spread out. Of course, Russell and Hadjar are definitely closer together. But other than that, almost everybody has a bit of a gap to each other. We do see Norris going to the pit lane there. Expected to come back out very, very soon. And come out onto some sort of tyre to do some sort of practice start on. But right now, Hadjar and Russell still fairly close to each other. So apparently Mercedes have reversed to a previous iteration of their car to try and see what was going on, to try and find some performance, but it hasn't really worked as well as they would have hoped maybe. For Antonelli, with the confidence that they didn't have so far in the recent races, not doing too bad. Currently, half of their Formula One career has, I think, been outside the points. They've had a really bad run. Their last point scoring position was P3. Of course, Max Verstappen is going to get investigated after the session for this towel situation that they've thrown onto the circuit. It was stuck in their cockpit earlier on. That was a little bit of drama. No flag, no red flag, no yellow flag. It was just chucked down on the circuit, and there is a note for investigation for Max Verstappen. But now the session is over, and we will see a few cars cross to the line. Everybody out on track right now. Pit out for Russell and Behrman, all on different tyres, looking to do their practice starts, and then we'll get to see who is going to be where on the order for the final time. We're just getting to understand who has completed their laps and double check if anybody's improving or not, and it looks like we're not going to see any improvements, so I'll go for one final double check. And then we'll call it there. I think Lando Norris and Piastri had a close call. Don't know if they were racing each other or not, but on track they were pretty close together. That is the session. No one will improve. It's Lando Norris on top. A 15.6 we go. 0.4 a lap quicker than we did earlier on this morning. We've got Piastri in P2. We've got Leclerc, Stroll, Alonso, Hamilton and Russell, with Hadjar, Tsunoda, Antonelli and Behrman. Then 1 second away from Norris's time was Nico Hülkenberg, followed by Ocon. Then we've got Verstappen, Lawson, Sainz, Bortoletto, Albon, Gasly and Colapinto. The two Alpines having a difficult session, as well as the two Williams. Carlos Sainz having some radio issues throughout the middle of it as well. We had, of course, Lawson having some impeding, so did Hadjar, but they're in different ends of the order. We've got Haas's, who are pretty happy with their position. Sauber's maybe a little bit frustrated with their running. Definitely the Mercedes are right now. Definitely are the Red Bulls, with Verstappen down in P14, not finding too many answers. Struggling with the balance, as they claimed earlier on in the session, just a few moments ago realistically. Hamilton, Leclerc up there, although far away from each other as teammates on the timing sheets. So it's, yeah, definitely crunch time here for Hamilton. They've got some homework to do, but it's Aston Martin who are absolutely flying right now. Norris really nice and confident right now. Piastri, all right, they're ahead of Leclerc by a tenth, but they're not as close as they want to be to their teammate. But it is really, really looking good for the Aston Martins. Despite Fernando Alonso missing out a session due to a back injury, they've got into FP2 and they've absolutely smashed it. Brilliant stuff, and I can't wait for tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching, and once again I'll say, as I did earlier on, this will be the last Friday F1 watch-along that we will do for a while. Of course, some time zones may allow us to do these watch-alongs, but for now, it has been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to do these Friday F1 watch-alongs. We're most likely going to be continuing the Saturday F1 watch-alongs and getting some good qualifying watch-alongs. Maybe even some Sunday ones for the race, but pretty much it's just going to be for qualifying. But for now, that's been that. We'll see you tomorrow for some more F1 watch-alongs. We'll see you later on for the LSI Championships as well. Once again, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.